Okay, let's go ahead and see if you guys can hear me correctly. If you can go down to the chat section, guys, and let me know if you can hear me okay, if I'm coming across all right. And we'll get started here in just a second. Okay, perfect. Appreciate it, guys. Let me go ahead and open this up. Actually, Shade is not here this evening. He's actually he's got a pretty bad cold. In fact, we both got colds, but I'm doing a little bit better than him. So I want to welcome everyone. We appreciate having you here. Looks like you guys can hear me okay, so we should be good to go. Oh, let me go ahead and go back. Okay. Okay, perfect. Well, we appreciate you guys all being here. Kind of give you guys a little bit of news. Shade and I are going to be out of the country from this Friday until essentially the next Friday, so from like the 8th to the 15th. And so if you guys have any questions while we're gone, Michael's going to be available for you. So we'll send out an email with his contact information. A lot of you guys have already, worked with Michael, talked with him in the past, so he's awesome. And while we're gone, he'll be answering any questions for you. So we'll send you out an email with a little bit more about that while we're gone. But if you need to set up a coaching session during that time, if you need some help, Michael's going to be the one to be able to help you get ready for the auction, over the counter, whatever you're doing. So appreciate him doing that. Tonight we're going to talk about essentially 5 steps to research title, and we may do this a little bit shorter because I'm not necessarily feeling great, so I might, kind of shorten them just a little bit this evening. But I wanted to at least get on and go over the process of really due diligence and some of the steps that we're going to take when we're researching property. As we're getting started with, we have a lot of new coaching students coming on board, and as the new students are getting started, really one of the first things that new investors have to learn is the process of really doing the due diligence. So, that's the reason during the coaching sessions we really focus on either finding, researching, buying, or selling property. One of those main things. And so, in that first, to begin with, we're doing a lot of finding and also researching. And so we want to go through and talk about some of these steps, make sure that you guys are all aware of them. And really, this is, researching county list and researching list in general, auction list, over the counter list. That's really, that's one of our biggest responsibilities, or the biggest thing we do to drive business to us, is really that researching process, finding lists that maybe nobody else is looking at, checking out different auctions that maybe don't have as much competition. All of these different methods and strategies are really the way that we're able to go out there and buy properties for less than taxes owed. So, if we're looking just to get started with regular tax deed investing, then, in an area that has high competition and maybe has online auctions, like some areas in Florida, bidding could bid up to 20, 30, even over 50% for some types of structured properties. And so it's still a great opportunity to acquire real estate for less than the market value, but it's not necessarily like some of these areas where we can get them for less than taxes owed. Of course, the quality of property is higher, and that's part of the advantage of as you guys start building businesses and start building more capital and funds coming in through the deals, where you can start looking at some of those bigger type deals. So let's go ahead and get started tonight. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and ask them in the chat section. That gives me the ability to see all of your questions at once, versus the question section where I've got to kind of go through and look at each one. So let's go ahead and get going today. And again, I apologize for being under the weather. So researching title. Really, there's 5 different steps that we're going to go through, and there could be, you know, additional steps and things that we do, but these are kind of the main areas that we're going to start researching when we're researching property records. So, you know, the the assessor's records. We're also going to research the property deed, and search the court records, and really go through and research all of the records that are available through the county courthouse, so or through the county websites and through the county government. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we're going to do is research the tax assessor records. And so this is the first place that we're always going to go, usually, unless we are looking for a list, then we may go to the tax collector. But once we start looking for property records, we're essentially looking for the assessor or the appraiser, whoever's in charge of evaluating the property within the area. So essentially coming up with the tax assessed value and the values of the properties, and doing all that is usually going to be the one that's, you know, that we're going to go to find these type of records. So once we go to a county, then we can go ahead and search for the tax assessor's office. You can either do that, you know, just as Google, or go to the county website, and usually it's going to be underneath something like departments. But when it comes to county records, they are open to the public. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the county has to have them available online to us. The county may have those available in person, where you have to essentially go down to the county courthouse, research them that way, and it can be, you know, take some time. So it's going to depend on the county, how up to date they are, how modern they are, with what type of county records they have available. Some counties will excuse me again. Some counties will have plenty of information available online, and other counties will really be lacking. So once we've identified the tax collector, the tax assessor's records, we'll also check the tax collector as well. So the assessor is going to be in charge of, you know, the property records, many times the maps, you know, so if there's any type of GSI maps or plat maps or anything like that, it's usually going to be connected through the assessor's record. Also, we can search the tax collector record. And the tax collector record is essentially, you know, where we're going to get the information for the back taxes and how delinquent they are and how long they haven't paid for. You know, we can go to the tax collector or the treasurer and be able to pull up that information, kind of see where they are at with the delinquent process, and that's going to be important for researching tax liens, you know, even researching tax deeds over the counters. That may be the amount of the delinquent opening bid or the opening bid amount. So, you know, that's a thing that we can do through the county collector. So really the assessor record is going to give us the information that we need. It's going to include you know, the parcel number, the sales history, maps, many times photos, assessed value, and really just all of that information that's going to give us an idea of the property value and kind of the overall situation. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's go online real quick, and we will research some. If I can get out of here. Oh well. Okay. Let's go look at some upcoming. Let's go look at some assessor records. Uh-oh. Hopefully, you guys can still hear me. It looks like there's some kind of problem going on. I had it. Okay. So what I'm going to do is just go into the website real quick, and we'll go look at some upcoming online auctions so we can get a look at the property records. And I again apologize, my head is pretty cloudy today with this cold, so I apologize for that. So let's take a look here. And let's check out, let's see if Duval has a sale coming up. So they do have a big sale coming up on the 13th, where they have, well, let me go ahead and show you. They have 232 properties being auctioned, and they initially had 320. So of the 320 they initially had, they had about 190 properties that have been redeemed by the property owners. So what we can go ahead and do is start looking at the list. And one advantage to online auctions is that most of them are going to have links directly to the county records. So if we were to go ahead and click on here, we can see the auction type, tax deed, the case number, the certificate number, opening bid, the parcel ID, and also the property address. So we can see a full address there. It has an opening bid about 10 grand. And let's go ahead and click on it and see what we can find out. So you can see that it's listed as a property use as a single family. Market value, it looks like it might be a little, it doesn't have a really high value. So let's go ahead and do this, and let's check it out and see, what it is. Is it a mobile home? Is it? And we could probably check that through the records as well. But I'm just going to go ahead and look on the maps. So it's an old house. It looks like. So hopefully you guys are seeing that. Yeah, kind of an old house. So, we'd probably, based on that, we could look a little more into it, but, it's a little pricey. We can see that this one here is on the same street and pretty close to it. So these two properties very well could be owned by the same property owner. And let's check it and just see. So we can see Alexander Adrian Trustee. Oh, sorry. And this is actually different. Good Homes of Northeast Florida and Company. So this is actually a different property. And let's see if it looks like it's any better than this one, condition-wise. Also, next week, even though me and Shade are going to be out of town, we're not letting you, you guys are still going to have a training. Michael is going to go ahead and do a training. I think we're going to looking at doing it on transferring deeds and kind of the process of submitting your deeds and all of that in Arkansas, and just kind of the process of doing that. So I think Michael will be doing that for us while we're gone. So even though me and Shade are gone, we're still going to have you guys have some good training for Michael while we're gone. So here's another property. We can see it has a $7,000 opening bid, but here we're just looking at the county record information. Now we could go, there's obviously more additional information. We can see the official record, the book and page number. So if we wanted to find the deed, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, right now we're just looking through the assessor's records, we could go ahead and use that number. Of course, see the assessed value, building value, land value, total value. We can see when it sold here back in 2011 for just under 10 grand. That it had a couple of cheap sales that might have been from business to business or something like that. And then in 2002 it sold for 10 grand. So about a decade apart, it ended up selling for just under 10 grand twice. We can see that's a single-family home, one story. It was quite old, built in 1922, and has about a $16,000 value as far as assessed. Let's take a look and see what Zillow will have it valued at. Let's also take a look at it and see. So, this is kind of one of the processes we want you guys to go through, is just start going through and looking at, upcoming online auctions, going through, looking at county records, get familiar with county records, and this property here definitely, maybe one we want to really check the value. It could be if getting at the right price, but we'd have to check. Let's go ahead and see what the property value is, because all of these ones are kind of older, older homes, usually about 80 years old, or built around the 20s or so, 20s or 30s. So, they're estimating about 32 grand, 3-bedroom, 1-bath, just underneath 1,000 square feet. Says a little bit about it here. It looks like it used to be for sale. But let's see if we can find something that looks a little bit even nicer. Here's one for $16,000. Let's take a look at that. Okay. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and go down to the chat section. And we'll go back here to our things quick, but I just want to look at a few more properties before we go back to the slides. So we can see the property here. You can also see it here in the overhead image. It's probably that property right there, I would imagine. We can see the brown roof next to it, and there's the brown roof next to it. So essentially, it's this property right here. Let's take a look at it. Now, this property, might need some work, but this is one I, may be a little bit more interested in. We check out the value. It's still kind of in a cheaper area, and would probably get a better idea of the condition. But, this one looks like it has maybe a little bit newer siding on it. The roof would check that kind of stuff out. Let's see what the value on it is. So about 40 grand, not too high. If you can get it at 16 grand, at 40 grand, I'd probably avoid it. Would have to check to see, but just based off just kind of looking at that, that's quite a bit for a property. Let's look at this one at 25 and see if it's a little bit better. So it does have a higher assessed value of around 41 grand. Let's go ahead and check out the address. Okay, so that one looks a little bit nicer. Let's check out the value. And it is. It's closer to 67,000. 3-bedroom, 2-bath, about 1,200 square feet. Shells was built in 2006. That doesn't. Let's check that out. You can see the sales date, $100,000 in 2006 with a warranty deed. So that's good news. It was built in 2006, so really this is a pretty nice little property just because of the age. I wouldn't have guessed it was that new, but county records show that as well. The roof looks pretty good. Huh, it's interesting. Looks kind of old, doesn't it? Looks a little bit like an older house. I wouldn't have guessed that, but they could have just used that real basic style maybe. But even, well, I guess that could be. That's interesting. We'll probably go back and do a little bit deeper search into this if we were going to do some offers on it. But, at 25 grand, it is pretty pricey, but if it's worth about 75 grand, there's still, 50 grand worth of property. And if it is a newer property, then it may not need as much work as, as some of the other types of properties that we could come across. There's another one for 12 grand, 11 grand. That's the one thing about some of these auctions is, we're looking here at Duval, and there's 250 or something, 230 potential properties available. So there's a huge amount of opportunity, and that's a lot of times when you can get some better type deals because there is so much inventory available. So some of these bigger sales that have a lot of property available are pretty good times to get, some of these cheaper properties or pick up a couple of properties that you got at pretty good prices. So just another little older single family home. You can see that at least this window's been boarded, and it looks like the door's been boarded up as well. Boarded up doesn't necessarily always mean a bad thing. It very well could be boarded up to protect the property, to protect the inside. And so we'll look if the property is boarded up, we'll look really at the condition and kind of try to determine the condition, and that wouldn't necessarily be a reason that we would avoid the property. So we can see some more here. Let's go ahead and see if we can find some that are a little bit more expensive. Here's one at 19. It's a multi-family unit, it looks like. Built in 1957. It's a duplex. Let's see. Upper story 8. You can see the sale information here. Back in 2002, it sold for $64,000. Then back in 1974, looks like that was the first sell for $16,000. So looks like the last time it did sell back in 2002, it did sell with a warranty deed, which is good for us. It means it hasn't been through a ton of weird foreclosure sales or something like that. It's pretty basic. So we check this one out real quick as well, and then we'll go back. That looks a little dangerous. Yeah, that looks a little scary right underneath there. I think I'd probably avoid that one. Let's go through here quick and see if we can find any real expensive ones, or just higher price ones, 20, 30,000. Here's one for 63. Now this looks pretty nice. It might be let's see, 4026 Harbor View, 4026 Harbor View. So essentially this property right here is a property that has a homestead tax against it. So if you look down here at the bottom, you can see where it says homestead 8, HX, $25,000, and essentially by using the homestead or doing a homestead tax, they can reduce their property taxes by $25,000, including, it looks like they're doing 50,000 for a total of 64. So, they're able to really cut down their property tax amount by doing it on a homestead. But that also means that the opening bid isn't going to start at the delinquent taxes. It's going to start at 50% of the assessed value. So, these are some of the properties that are going to start about 50% of assessed value. The market value could be higher, and it could still be a good deal to buy, but that's something that we'll take into account. So, see that there's a small pool here, pool in the back. Looks like a pretty nice house overall. Well, let's see what type of market we've got on it. Okay, so the estimate on it was about 133. One thing that is nice is you can see photos here within it. So we can actually get a good idea of what the condition is. At least this was in 2015. We can see the bathroom, the garage. Looks like there's a canal in the back as well. So, with these additional pictures, as long as we do have somebody check it to make sure that it still looks, like this could very well be worth buying at 60, depending on it, because you're not necessarily picking it up for pennies on the, at least big time pennies on the dollar at this price. But if you can acquire property for, at 60,000, it's worth 130. Let's say, there's still about $70,000 worth of profit to be had on this house. So even though this one, starts out a lot higher than it normally would, you could still be profitable on this house because there's not really very many ways to buy real estate in Florida, for less than market value. Okay. So let's go ahead and we've looked at some of these real quick. Let's go back. So we've went ahead and researched the tax assessor records. We're also going to, we may go ahead and find the deed. Counties will usually be, have some type of service that'll give us access to the deed records, either for free or for a small fee. We may need to call the county recorder's office and get it, but the deed can actually have some interesting information on it sometimes. It may have information like easement information that may be pertaining to the property. There could be judgments or mortgages or something like that also listed on the deed. So the deed can be pretty helpful, and also it will also be able to verify that the deed, the last deed, looks pretty correct. When it comes to researching past titles and past chain of titles, usually your title company is going to research back 50 to 70 years worth of back titles. So they will go ahead and find, the most recent deed. Then on that deed will have a map and a plat number, and from there they'll be able to find the other deed and locate the older deed, and essentially go back and locate any older deeds on the property. What we're most concerned of as tax sale investors is just checking that most recent deed to see, is there anything that we need to be aware of? Is there anything about the deed that looks like a red flag? And when it comes to investing in tax deeds, it'll kind of depend a little bit about the amount that you're investing into the deed and the risk and money and that you're putting into it on how much you're going to research the deed, or how much effort you're going to put into researching the title. We're still going to go through and do all of our due diligence, but if you're investing $50 or $100 into a property, sometimes it may not make sense to spend $200 or $300 on a full title search on a property that you're spending $50 for. So it'll kind of depend on the property. As the investment goes up, then it may be worth it to have a lien search done, where you go back and search the liens on the property to make sure there's nothing that's going to stick through foreclosure. Or we'll also talk about reviewing the court records, which is essentially doing the title search ourselves. When it comes to title searches, really we have the ability to research the title. Most people just don't know how to do it, and it's kind of the niche, or kind of what title companies do. And so when it comes to these type of properties, depending on the level of risk, you can decide if your due diligence is sufficient, or if you need additional research on the property. So, when we are investing in single-family homes in Florida through the online auctions, then, I am going to, in fact, the county we were researching in actually had title searches done that they did when they went through the foreclosure. So I was able to actually use the county's title searches and thoroughly research the property. Also back that up with online Google searches or court record searches, and felt pretty confident in buying the property. There's other cases where wasn't able to pull up that information, and so if you're investing a significant amount of money, $5,000 or $10,000 into some type of property, then that's where it can be worth it to essentially have a title search done. So once we find the deed, we'll go ahead and research it. The deed will. Let me actually go back real quick. The deed is usually going to be in the county recorder's office, the land records office, official records office. It could be the court's office, or the clerk of court. It kind of just depends on the county, but what we'll do is we'll go onto the county website and we'll search for whoever is handling the deeds to the property. So, we'll use Google searches, we'll use the site searches on the county website to help narrow that down as well. That's really what we have to do, is we just have to kind of practice researching and trying to find this information to be able to find it. So once we went ahead and researched the maps, we've researched the county record information, the sales record, we've researched the deed, we are really concerned, or we still, have some questions about any other type of governmental lien on the property. So whether that be a IRS lien, a state lien, some type of city lien like a grass cut lien or a nuisance lien or something like that, those are the types of things that could slip through the foreclosure, or essentially not be extinguished through the foreclosure, that we may still be responsible for paying off. So if there is some type of governmental lien, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're not going to buy the property, but that does mean we've got to figure out how much that lien is and see if we can work out some kind of discount or payment if we buy the property, to have that lien essentially eliminated or forgotten about. So, that is something that city governments will be, sometimes they are willing to negotiate on the lien amount. Essentially you can tell them, hey, nobody's going to end up really buying this or paying this off, because there's more delinquent taxes than there's property, than the property's valued. And so, that's where you can sometimes get to submit offers for less than taxes owed, or if there is large liens against the property, get the city the city government to reduce that by paying off so much of it at one time. So once we get to the county website, what we're really going to be looking is for the court records. So that could be just the circuit court. It could be I don't know why I'm blanking it right now. The other type of not circuit court, chancellor court. I don't know why I'm blanking it, but anyway, essentially we're going to look for whoever's in charge of posting and recording tax liens on the property, mortgages, anything like that. And so, usually we're going to be able to find that through some type of court record, or it could be the recorder's office. But once we find that, that's where we're going to search the property owner's name to see if there's any other problems with the property, if there's any liens against the property. In fact, you can pull up all kinds of information by doing some of these searches. A while ago we were doing a search online for one of the property owners, and we ended up pulling up his court records and not only just judgments or things like that could pertain to the property, but also you could even pull up criminal records and those kind of things. So you really can especially if the county does have some type of online tool available, you really can research these properties and feel pretty confident about what you're buying. So that's where we'll usually be looking. It can take a little bit of research. It's going to take getting on Google and doing Google searches, looking for the right keywords, using the county name, going to the county and looking through the different departments, looking for what department handles the deeds or the liens on the property. But that's really going to be the step that we're going to need to go through to thoroughly search these properties. If we don't do the search on our own, then that's where we can look at either hiring one. If we can get one of the cheaper ones done, where you can get them done for $30 or $50, you could look at that. You could also look at having just a plain lien report done, which can range around $95 to $100 maybe, and that'll just pull up all of the liens on the property, so at least you'll know what type of other governmental liens are on the property. But depending on where you at, like I mentioned, some counties will actually have the title search done on the property, and you can request it and see if you can find it, and actually use the title search to make your final decision. So if you are able to pull up a title search, that makes all of the difference. In fact, we've seen title searches offered in properties in of course, like in Florida, but also in places like Washington, sometimes even in California. And in fact, in Washington, we've seen where the county is actually offered title insurance on some of the properties that they actually did the title research on. So they looked through the title, they've determined, hey, this really isn't that big of a risk because this reason, we'll go ahead and issue title insurance on it. So, kind of the general rule is tax deeds can't have title insurance issued on it, but that's not necessarily always the case. It's really going to be kind of dependent on the title company, and if the title company understands some of these processes, then they can actually get title insurance done without going through quiet title. So, essentially with the court records, you'll go ahead and search it, search the county website, and kind of the last step is to contact the city or the water department or whoever it is directly. So, if we, for example, let's say we're looking in Arkansas, and we're going through the list, and we see that there's nothing been on the county level written on the property. So there's no liens on the county level, at least through the interested parties that we can see. So at that point, we not sure that there is, but maybe the property is getting mowed or something like that, so we're a little suspicious. Well, at that point, at that point, what we can do is just go ahead and give the city a call and find out if they do have some type of lien issued against the property or anything like that. Sometimes we may get a runaround or pointed in another direction, but this is kind of the rock in the hard place, or the difficult thing about tax sale investing is essentially it's on us to go through and research these county records and research this information. This is so different than traditional real estate investing, where you are, going out looking in specific markets, trying to buy a property for maybe 85 or 90 cents on the dollar, if you could even find something like that. Usually it's probably closer to 95, where you're just trying to make, essentially you're trying to make 5 or 10 grand on a flip. And that's the way, a lot of people will get started with traditional real estate. What we're talking about here is, essentially buying these type of properties through county governments, where we are doing that additional due diligence on our own. We're researching these properties. We are buying these properties. We are transferring the deeds into new buyers' names. We are taking them through quiet title. So, it's completely different than your normal real estate investing. In fact, we'll even focus on areas that maybe are less populated. As long as the real estate market is good, and the price that we're buying the property for is a good price, then really we're in a win-win situation. So if we're picking up properties for under $500 and they're worth, anywhere between $4,000 to $8,000, well, even in turning those properties, and even if you turn them for $2,000 or $3,000 at a low, you are still making a huge return off of your investment if you're purchasing these for a couple of $100. So that'll kind of be the last step that we'll go through once we've researched some of these other county departments. Is we'll go ahead and give the city a call and find out if there is some type of lien against the property. Like I mentioned, though, it's going to depend on how much you're investing. Obviously, the more money you're investing into a property, the more you want to pay extra money to, check to do the due diligence to make sure that your money's protected. If we're investing less money, then we can do, we're still going to do our due diligence. We're still going to protect ourselves, but, it may not make sense to spend big money out of pocket to do a title search where we already have a 99% idea that there could be nothing on it. So if there is something, we're willing to take that risk, take a $50, $100 loss or whatever it is. And even in those scenarios, you can usually still sell a property for a profit, because we are buying them so cheaply. But we appreciate you guys. Like I mentioned, me and Shade are going to be out of town from this Friday till the next Friday. So from the 8th to the 15th. If you guys have any questions, we'll be sending out an email tomorrow with Michael's contact information. If you just go to the 800 number on the website, that's going to take you in to directly to Michael. In fact, we've set that really up. We set up that 800 number really for the coaching students. So I believe it's extension number 3. We'll take you directly into Michael. Leave a message if he's not available, or if he's on the phone or something, or send an email and he'll get right back to you. So if you do need to set up an appointment, review properties, anything like that, while we are gone, Mike will be able to help you do that. But again, we appreciate you guys being on the line. I apologize for me kind of struggling through this a little bit tonight with this cold, and this fever, but hopefully you guys learned something, and I'll go ahead and get prepared for this next call here in a minute. So again, thank you guys, everyone. We'll send you out the email with Michael's contact information, and then once we get back, if we need to set up appointments or anything like that, Michael can go ahead and do that while we're gone, and we'll get back and get rocking. Also, next week, even though we're out of town, Michael will be doing the coaching session. So there's going to still be great information that you're going to learn next week, so be sure to attend. And again, we appreciate you guys. Thank you, and we'll talk to you soon.